Why the Utah Republicans hate you. Kind of. The story kind of starts at the tail of two congressional maps. As you can see, there are 3 Republican seats and 1 swing seat. Everything changed when the new map attacked! The map suddenly changed to 4 Republican seats. How? Did Central Utah suddenly become super conservative? No! The map was gerrymandered! Now, those of you who aren't deep into the weeds on politics probably aren't aware of what gerrymandering is. Gerrymandering is redrawing maps strategically to minimize the votes of your opponents. The politicians choose the voters instead of the voters choosing the politicians. So what? Why does this matter? I'll tell you why. In 2018, Utahns voted on this initiative that moved redistricting from the legislature, the House and Senate, to a new independent commission, something shown to effectively prevent gerrymandering. It passed by a margin of about 0.6%. You may be asking, wait, what? Weren't you just telling us about how the legislature gerrymandered Utah's map? In late 2020, the Utah Senate put forth a bill that made it so that the commission had no actual authority, could only recommend maps for the legislature to pass, but they could still make their own. Before the bill, the legislature could only pass maps put forth by the commission, but after the bill, all the commission could do was say, "Pretty, please pass our map." Okay, but you may be asking yourself, why is this coming up now? The gerrymander was 4 years ago. When Senate Bill 200 was passed, some organizations sued the legislature for blatantly going against Proposition 4. Over the next 4 years, the Republican legislature kept appealing and doing the political equivalent of throwing a tantrum. And the largely Republican Utah Supreme Court told the Utah GOP to stop throwing a tantrum or they would go to the Utah Democrats for a new map. As you can probably guess, the GOP didn't take too kindly to this. And now is where we introduce the chairman of the Utah Republicans, Rob Axson. He is the man who is in charge of leading the policy for the party and a former staffer for Senator Mike Lee. And he has been leading the charge to nullify Proposition 4. After 4 years of throwing a tantrum, they finally are trying to create an initiative to repeal Prop 4. They should have done this 4 years ago, instead of throwing a tantrum, but whatever. Here he is talking about the new initiative.
We've been told by the courts that that's the only way now in Utah to do that, since the Utah Supreme Court last year has established that something coming from the people supersedes our elected representatives. I, for one, don't agree with that conclusion, but it's the conclusion that the courts have forced us to abide by, so we will abide by that and go to the people.
I, for one, don't agree with that conclusion.
Robert Axson, why are you so mad about having to go through the people to repeal the will of the people? Because the people are stupid and don't know what they want. But aren't you put in place by votes of the people? That's why they're stupid. Political genius! Okay, but seriously, what does it tell you about the motivations of this man? He supports not allowing candidates to get into a primary via signatures, opting only to allow people in via the caucus system. Caucus? The caucus system is a system where voters vote for the representatives to vote for leaders. This man loves this kind of system. It fails on the grounds that people often don't check what the representatives do, and the representatives often get away with breaking promises. You know who else has a system like this? That's right, China! Though admittedly China has more state control because the state chooses candidates and the representatives vote for. Mr. Rob, your vote here has been throwing a tantrum over the fact that the legislature actually has to be accountable to voters. It is a huge indicator that he thinks lowly of voters when going to voters is a last resort for this man. What now? I've done a whole lot of complaining and not offered up any solutions to this issue. If you find yourself Democrat aligned, you can't do much about this man other than keep voting with the Democrats and voting to keep the proposition next year, assuming the GOP succeeds in their initiative. If you are Republican aligned, what you should do is primarily vote to keep Proposition 4 in 2026 and attend caucus and raise concerns about this man's opinions. You should also raise your concerns about how this man showing actual contempt towards voters is very close to key figures within the Utah GOP, being a former staffer for a current senator. My goal with this is to raise awareness of how the Utah GOP is making moves to ignore voters and subvert democracy. If enough people become aware of this issue, we can build bridges across the political system, push for a system that benefits the voters and not the people at the top. If you guys disagree with any points I made in this video, please feel free to discuss these points in the comments. I will happily read every comment. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Scrumptious Democracy, and goodbye.